just reading through the Psalm 16, which is the first psalm of the 10 found in what's called which is the first psalm of 10 in what's called the Tikkun Klali, the general Tikkun, the general fixing, right, of Rebbe Nachman, right? And so it talks about how King David, in this case, right, because it says Michtam LeDavid, right, and there is a whole set of arguments in the Talmud about, did David actually write all the Psalms, right, or were some of the Psalms written, say, by Moses when they came through the Red Sea, right? When God parted the sea, did they sing some Psalms then? So there's lots of arguments about this, but this psalm is a great statement of faith, right, in God. Okay? This is God, my benefactor, right, and right at the same time that my conscience admonishes me, right, at night. And so I would say it's not so much a matter of judgment. I would say it's more a matter of this is how the speaker, David here, right, we're going to call him David, right, is conveying something about his own psyche, right, which I think resonates for a lot of people, right? It's not judgmental to sort of notice that we have sort of a sense that something's not quite right, right? And we very often, when we have that sense, we very often go to a place of, oh, it's my conscience. I must have done something wrong, right? Or, this is happening, right? So it must be my fault, right? I must have done something and now God is punishing me, right? So if it sounds a little judgmental, right, I think it's in part because people tend to judge themselves, right? We tend to judge ourselves. We tend to be very harsh on ourselves, right? And so I think the Bible, the Psalms, right, reflect that. I'm not sure the Psalms or, what, and of course, since people are so judgmental, right, and the woman here was saying, and then people get very self-righteous, right? People do get self-righteous, right? And but very often the most self-righteous people are the people who are harshest on themselves, right? So, but remember, right, as long as I keep God in my mind, right, as long as I keep God's presence with me, right, I rejoice, my being exalts, my body rests secure, right, because David has a sense, right, that God will not abandon me, right? I have God with me, right, and right, you will teach me the path of life. In your presence is perfect joy. Delights are ever in your right hand. All right. So, Mary, why don't you read one of yours, and we'll see to what degree it's the same, and if there's a difference, right? Would that be a theological difference or simply a linguistic, a translator's decision?
I took a couple. I have one that was written to be gender neutral, non-sexist.
Oh, wow, cool.
All right, maybe I could start.
You can start with that one, yeah, because that's going to be very different.
It's not a. I don't know of anybody who uses it for liturgical.
Yeah. Do you know who wrote it?
Well, I know the people who put it together, but this whole Bible was put together by a group, so I don't know.
Got it. Right.
It's called the Bible. Out of Maryland, I'm talking about- All right. Say, you are my refuge. I say to our God, you are my God. Then,
Want me to read it?
yeah, because I have trouble with
I was going to say, yeah, it sounds like it's a little hard to see.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Oh God, keep me safe. You are my refuge. I said to our God, you are my God. There is nothing good for me apart from you. The holy people of my land are wonderful. My greatest pleasure is to be with them. But those who rush after other gods will bring many troubles upon themselves. I will not take part in their sacrifices. I won't even speak the names of their gods. You, Adonai, are all that I have. You are my food and drink. My life is safe in your hands. Within the boundaries you set for me, there are nothing but pleasant places. What a delightful inheritance I have. I praise our God who guides me. Even at night, my heart teaches me. Interesting. That's a really interesting difference, right? The food and drink business is kind of
the
interesting too.
translation, yeah. That's the only one that I've seen.
Yeah. I am always aware of your presence. You are right by my side, and nothing can shake me. My heart is happy, and my tongue sings for joy. I feel completely safe with you because you won't abandon me to the grave. You won't let your loved one see decay. You show me the path to life. Your presence fills me with joy, and by your side, I find enduring pleasure. Interesting. Pleasure. What does he have down here? Delights. Yeah, interesting. Remote. Okay. Very interesting. All right. So this is a 1997.
Yeah, that's pretty
Cool.
Jerusalem is standing, right?
Yes. Right. And then this is the Good News Bible. Okay.
I like this. I bless the Lord who has guided me. Okay, fine.
Yes.
But then my conscience
Admonishes me,
at
right.
night.
Well, let's
I
see
don't
what this.
like that.
Let's see what this one says here.
That's sweet.
Yeah. So my inmost self instructs me. Okay, that's what the Jerusalem Bible says. And here in the Good News Bible, right, it says that my conscience warns me. Yeah. So it's very interesting how to understand this, right, is a really interesting question.
You're not supposed to.
Well, I think I don't think it's that you're not supposed to understand it. I think that you are enjoined, right? Especially if you're going to do this practice of reading these 10 Psalms, that you're enjoined to sort of have a relationship with the Psalm, right? So how do you understand it, right? And I would push you, right? I think to say, not like, oh, I don't like that translation, right? So I'm going to use a different one, but more of this is the translation that speaks to me today,
Oh,
right? So if you do have a situation where you feel like, oh, did I maybe not behave correctly, right? Maybe my conscience is bothering me, right? So maybe on that day, at night, my conscience sort of, was poking me a little bit. And on days when no, that's not where it is, right? It's that my inmost self is instructing me, right?
you just don't want a night of relaxation.
I mean, it's an interesting question, right? Right. So, or maybe you just have a night when you do have relaxation, right? And your conscience is quiet. And
Every night I say to myself before I really try to sleep, it's something I have done better. I don't like that feeling that.
no, it's not. It's,
Guilt.
well, it's not a good feeling. And I guess that maybe that's part of what this psalm is about, right? Which is that, I don't really like that feeling,
No,
right? And so how am I going to overcome it, right? How am I going to
change religion.
move? It's not so easy. Change to what, Ruth? But I think the psalm itself gives us an idea, right? It says, when my conscience admonishes me at night,
Yeah.
right? What do? I bring God into my mind, right? I fill my mind, right, with thoughts of my connection with God and the degree to which I feel safe, right, and fed in that, like literally, this one has, gives me food, right? Which one is this? That's this. Yeah. So that's verse 5. My portion. Okay. Manat chelki. Right. Kosi ata. Kosi ata. The kosi. Right. Okay. So, right. So that's kos is my cup. Right. So my allotted share and portion, right, could easily be my rations. Right. My food and beverage rations. Like, why not? So, so God, if you want to have that kind of intimacy with God, right? How do you do it? Right? You do it by bringing God in close, right, to yourself. All right. So here is, and here's another translation. This one by Norman Fisher, who's one of my favorite Psalm translators. He has a whole book. They're also not gendered, and they are Zen inspired. He's a Jew who became a Zen priest. So this one goes, protect me from fear, for I place my trust only in you. Notice that there's no michtam LeDavid, right? None of that stuff, right? It's not David in Norman Fisher's work, which I think is very, very interesting. There's none of that throughout. So he really is sort of suggesting that the psalmist is the reader of the poem, right? It's not David, right, or Solomon or anybody else. So protect me from fear, for I trust only in you. My soul has said, very interesting, as opposed to I say to my soul or whatever it is. And how do they do it? Yeah, instead of I said to God, right? My soul has said, right? It comes from inside. That you are my guardian, sole foundation of my happiness, and I will find my delight in all that is yours on earth. Right? Where is he gonna? Right? He's gonna connect deeply with God.
This sounds like from where it came from, Boulder, Colorado.
Yes. He's from San Francisco, but may as well be Boulder. Yeah. As for all that shuts you out, great will be their sorrow. I will not pour out their offerings nor call their names, even in my dreams. Interesting. He's going to connect the at night business, right, to these sort of false gods. You, only you. Very interesting, right? Where does that come from? You, only you. I don't know. Yeah. That's an interpolation. It's very powerful. Why is it scary, Ruth?
Because you always think, I'm lying there trying to sleep, and then comes, what should I be aware of that I shouldn't do tomorrow? I'm full of guilt. I've done nothing wrong.
And yet you're full of guilt. So you are a perfect candidate for the Tikkun Klali. because you're so racked with guilt for not sinning, right?
She's Jewish,
Sorry?
because she's Jewish.
He's
So
Jewish.
she's full of guilt.
You just have unregulated, uncontrollable guilt.
It's not every night.
This is all good. Okay, so thank God, Francine, it's not every night.
Okay.
I'm sorry?
If something goes wrong, particularly a physical thing. if
Yeah.
something hap- My first reaction is, what did I do?
Right.
I think it's partly what parents do to children without realizing what they do. Like, what did you do?
Right.
Something fell or broke or
We
whatever.
want an answer.
Right. There was a noise. You must have done something.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, but I also think that this is one thing that does sort of separate us from the people who wrote the Psalms, right? Which is that we also have a very inflated sense of our own agency,
Yes,
right? That if something went wrong,
we must have done
we
that.
must have done it, right? Because we control everything, right? And so that obviously is something to sort of think about. Like, is it really the case that everything is under my control? And I'm not suggesting, right, that we need to ascribe it to God, right? Because I don't think that's necessarily right either. But just sort of that there are larger forces at work in the world that are not us. Yeah. So only you are my share and my cup. You have drawn my lot, and it has fallen out agreeably.
Good.
And so goral here is the same word that they use, like in the Purim story, right? For fate, right? It's like it's a or a lot. Yeah. Like a lottery. Lovely indeed is my estate. My heritage is pleasant to me. I bless you who brought me to this day. And even at night, in the trying times, my trembling body is tethered to you. So yet another way of understanding, right, that somewhat mysterious verse. But you can always tell when there's a mysterious verse, because that means a mysterious verse means a lot of different versions.
Yeah.
Right. So this was a different version, right? So specifically, when at night I'm being bugged, right? I am tethered to you, right? I am aware, I'm even more aware than usual, right, of my connection
To God.
to God. Yeah. And your presence is always before me in all the deeds of my hand. Like everything that I do, right, God is present. And I will not be shaken from it. So my heart rejoices, my spirit is glad, and my body rests secure. I mean, a lot of these translations are remarkably straightforward for all of the zenness of them, right? It's like, oh, you translated the psalm.
Also psychological.
Well, the Psalms are just psychological,
Yeah.
I think. I think they are very, very sensitive.
But I wish I knew all this when I was a child.
You could have learned it. I don't know. So
Not in the-
I'm not sure that I was a kid. I would have been able to understand this stuff. So for you will not abandon my soul to darkness. Now, this is all very different, right?
Yeah.
My soul, the dark, and he had nothing about the soul in the actual psalm, right? There's no soul. It's about life and death. It's not about soul and darkness. You will not suffer me to be overwhelmed in terror. You will teach me the path toward life. Your presence is my sweetest joy. Your right hand is my chief delight. Always.
Wouldn't you say that nefesh is soul?
Nefesh, I think, generally means, in a biblical context, means like a life, right? So kilo ta'ov nafsi, right? Like my life breath, right? To Sheol. Now, you're absolutely right, Francine, right? That in a rabbinic sense, right? When the rabbis you know, come along, right? And Christianity has come along, and the idea of a soul has come along, right? Jews pick up
Yes.
the soul. And so he's not wrong, right? It's definitely one of the ways you can translate nefesh, and people do. It's interesting, right, that the Catholic ones don't do that. I think.
Oh, because in the translation that I have it, they translate it as my soul.
Ah, very interesting, right? Because here they don't.
This is the Jerusalem Bible.
Jerusalem Bible. Oh, my soul to Sheol. Right. So it's very interesting, right? So this is how you know, in a sense, right, that soul in this context means sort of like my life, right?
Mm.
Sheol is like Hades, right? You're just like a shade. It's, it's no different, not that different from the Greek underworld. The one that's a little different is the Good News Bible, right? The Evangelist's Bible, right? Which says, "You protect me from the power of death," right? Which in a I think in a Christian, Mary, you can correct me, right? In a Christian sense, right, is the power of death is the absence of eternal life, right? It's not necessarily physical death.
Right.
Yeah.
And then once, you have to look at the context.
Yeah. So I don't know, obviously, what they're thinking about here, but my guess is that this one is a Christian reading, right? And so I am thankful and glad. I feel completely secure because you protect me from the power of death. I have served you faithfully, and you will not abandon me to the world of the dead. Which again, you could read as hell, right? It's sort of a Christian hell, right? This where everyone, this sort of the souls of the dead go to hell, or they go to heaven, right? But in heaven, it's eternal life. That could be a Christian reading. I don't get the sense that the Jerusalem Bible is that Christian. Although the pit,
No, the Jerusalem Bible is not Christian.
the Jerusalem Bible is not Christian.
No, I think it's put out by the Koren publishers.
Oh, is this the Koran? Oh, very interesting.
I have the Jerusalem Bible put out by Koren publishers in Jerusalem.
Interesting. So is that what this one is? Is this Koran also? This Jerusalem Bible?
I thought it was double day, so
Oh, interesting. So Francine, read where it says, "So my heart exults, my very soul rejoices."
What sentence is that? What sentence?
That would be verse 9.
Verse 9. Therefore my heart is glad, and my glory rejoices. My flesh also dwells secure. For thou wilt not abandon my soul to Sheol, nor wilt thou suffer thy Holy One to see the pit. Thou wilt make known to me the path of life. In thy presence is fullness of joy. At thy right hand are pleasures forevermore.
Wonderful. Okay, so it's a different Jerusalem Bible. So there's two Jerusalem Bibles. There's the Koran one, which is Jewish, because Koran is a Jewish publisher in Jerusalem. And then the Jerusalem Bible from Doubleday, it's not clear. All right. My assumption is that it's a Christian Bible because
yes.
presumably you wouldn't have purchased a Bible that was a Tanakh. You would have purchased a Bible with an Old and a New Testament.
It has an Old and a New Testament.
Right. So that's a Christian Bible.
And I understand that the Jerusalem Bible was offered to Paul's Press, which is one of them.
Right.
And they turned it down for some reason.
Got it.
And a lot of the Paulist fathers, who then, as time went on, thought that was one of their biggest mistakes.
Oh, interesting. They should have grabbed it when they could.
They could have grabbed it.
Yeah. So just to point out that Norman Fisher's translation actually does this word at the very end, right? Netzach means always, evermore, right? So the one that Francine just read, right, has that word. What was it? Everlasting or evermore, Francine?
Evermore.
and right,
evermore.
and Norman Fisher has always at the end. So that seems like a little bit out of nowhere, right? But it's actually the last word of the poem is Netzach, right?
Where can I get a copy of it?
What do you want?
Well, I want to know where I can get a copy of it.
A copy of Norman Fisher.
No, of what you were going over.
Yeah, well, I mean, I can print off one for you,
Yeah.
you know, or you can buy Norman Fisher's book. Yeah,
Where? I don't know.
you can get them on Amazon, or you can go to the Brookline Booksmith and ask them to order it for you. Well, you'll probably have to ask them to order it for you. So that's how you spell his name.
So this is the first psalm of what?
So this is the first psalm of what's called the Tikkun Haklali.
Oh. Uh-huh.
I'm sorry.
And what is that? What is that?
So Rebbe Nachman of Brislov has this series of 10 psalms that
Mhm.
when you are, you know, he sees depression, right, and as dislocation from God, right, disconnection from God.
Uh-huh.
He says when you're feeling down, right, now he, of course, like many rabbis, priests, other religious people, right, from earlier centuries, is a little bit more obsessed with sin than we are, right? So he talks about it in terms of sin. You know, sin is not, you know, contemporary Jews, sin, not really our thing.
There are so many varieties.
Well, there's that, to be sure, but it's also the fact, I think, that in our tradition, one of the ways of understanding sin, right, is it's a chet, right, that it's a missing of the mark, right? We were trying to do the right thing, but we ended up missing the mark, right? And so because we're human, we're imperfect, right? It's not the Augustinian, you know, because we were conceived in sin, thus we are sinners, right? That's not a very Jewish way of looking at it, right? It's more that we are human, and so we're gonna miss the mark from time to time. And the problem with missing the mark, right, is that then we become disconnected from God, and we don't want to be disconnected from God. So Opening to You is the name of Norman Fisher's book. Opening to You, Zen-inspired translations of the Psalms. And then the Psalms that we'll read, and we can look at the next one. We can start looking at the next one right today, right, is Psalm 32, Psalm 41 and 42, Psalm 59, Psalm 77, Psalm 90, 105, 137, and 150. The final psalm. And the one we sang at the beginning was Psalm 137. So I think that this one is really very, for the most part, right, and not all of them are going to be this way, but as the sort of first psalm in the series, right, this is one that is mostly positive, right? It recognizes, right, that our conscience, our inmost being might sometimes be a little off kilter, right? But it is a very encouraging psalm, right? It's about the connection we have with God, right? And whether again we think of God as a external, right? Sort of a personal God, or we think of God as like the most internal part of ourselves, right? And when we're in harmony with God, right, things are good. And when we get out of harmony, that's when the trouble starts. All right, so I'll read Psalm. So the next one is Psalm 32. So I'll read Psalm 32.
That's not next week, but the following.
It'll be the following week.
Oh, why?
I'm on vacation next week.
Oh, are you going to Timbuktu?
I am. I'm going all the way to Timbuktu. I'm going to Olives Bridge, New York.
Where?
Olives Bridge, New York, where I will be doing a guitar camp. Focusing on playing the guitar for a week. So. All right, so here's Psalm 32, which I'll read in the translation that's here. It's a psalm of thanksgiving for recovery from sickness. Song of David. And again, very interesting that there are all different kinds of ways of singing in the Bible, right? So the first one is a michtam, whatever that is. This one is a maskil, different kind of song. I don't know if that means like a bolero or a jig or whatever. But all right, so a song of David of instruction, right? Maskil, he is saying, right, is this is from Pascal, from the idea of enlightening. So this is somehow an instructional song. Happy is the one whose sins are forgiven, whose transgressions are wiped away. Happy is one whose wrongdoing Adonai passes over, whose spirit is without deceit. When I kept silent, my bones wore out. I groaned all day in fear. Day and night, your hand weighed heavily upon me. My marrow turned dry, parched as by the heat of summer. Selah. Selah is this word that no one really knows what it means. So we usually just use Selah, means something along the lines of hooray, probably, or oh yeah, something like that. So now I will acknowledge transgression. I will no longer obscure wrongdoing. Even as I begin to say, I admit my sins before Adonai, you forgave my errors and misdeeds, Selah. Right? The whole idea that what you need to do to gain forgiveness from God is what? To confess your sins. Right? That's what it takes. As soon as you confess, right? As soon as you acknowledge to yourself even what you've done, right? Sometimes the hardest person to tell is your own self, right? Oh, I did, you're right, I should have done that differently. Let one devoted to you offer this prayer at those moments when you may be found. When trials and troubles come, may they not flood in a deluge of destruction. You are my shelter. You protect me from distress, from enemies. You surround me with the joy of deliverance, Selah. You have said, I will teach you wisdom. I will illumine the path you must take. My eye will advise you and guide you. Do not be like a horse or a mule who cannot understand, who with a bit and a bridle must be restrained during grooming, so that they do not come too close and attack. Many are the troubles of the wicked. The one who trusts in Adonai will be enveloped by loving kindness. Rejoice in Adonai, exalt righteous ones. Shout for joy, all who are upright in heart.
What Bible was that from?
This one is from this book, which is called Healing of Soul, Healing of Body,
Hmm.
which is a book with translations and commentaries on the 10 Psalms in question. It's an old book. It's from 1994.
Okay.
Everything is relative. So I will look for alternative Psalms. I mean, alternative translations for that one. And I will, I'm sorry?
I like that.
Yeah, this translation is good. But I think it's always interesting to look at multiple translations along with the Hebrew as well. And yeah, this one is the nice one. And you know, and also just it's very interesting, I think, right, that that what we've said, what you said before, Mary, is very much sort of along these lines, right? I said, oh, maybe today we have more of a sense of our own agency, right? But here the psalmist is like, oh, I wasn't feeling well and now I feel better. And why do I feel better? Because I admitted my sins, right? So clearly it was something I did, and that's why I don't feel well. Okay, so we're not so different.
That's what we're with the age.
Yeah.
Never heard this expression. My marrow turned dry.
Yes, my marrow turned dry.
Medicinal.
Yeah.
Tell my kids.
So let's see what JPS says about that one. All right. So David Maskil. All right, what did we say about by limbs? Oh. Yeah, here it's just they do it figuratively, right? So that they're saying my vigor waned. I lost my strength. Not that I lost the marrow in my bones, right? But I lost my strength. So I don't know that word in Hebrew.
Which word?
The word that they're translating is marrow. So it's kiyomam v'layla tichbad ala yadecha, right? So day and night your hand is upon me, or your hand weighs upon me, right? Nepach, right? Lishadi, becher vonei kaitz sela, right? So lishadi, lishadi. I don't know that word, new word for me. So we would have to look that up in the Bible, in the biblical dictionary, figure out, does it mean marrow? Does it mean strength? Right? Presumably it means some sort of internal organ, right?
Yeah, but it doesn't, an organ doesn't dry up, but the marrow turns dry.
Right. Isn't a bone an organ, or bone doesn't count as an organ?
Inside the bone is a marrow.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's part of an organ. It's part of an organ. Right. Exactly. They're just bones. We need someone who knows the anatomy. Exactly. All right. Great. So we will turn to Psalm 32 and 42 next week, and week after next. Did I say 40, 41? I think it is. Yeah, 32 and 41. Yeah. All right. Thank you, Francine.
Have a good vacation.
Thank you. Enjoy. I'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Okay, thank you.